My name is Kale. I was born and raised on the streets of Pandora, a lawless planet in the Boarderlands universe. Life was tough, but I managed to survive by joining a small gang that roamed the streets, scavenging for whatever we could find. But that all changed when I was captured by a group of ruthless bandits and brought to a massive arena on the outskirts of Pandora City. The arena was a place where people fought for the entertainment of others, a modern-day gladiator pit. I was thrown into a cell with other prisoners, all of us awaiting our turn to fight. I was terrified, but I knew I had to be strong if I wanted to survive. The first few fights were brutal, and I watched as my fellow prisoners were torn apart by their opponents. But as time went on, I learned to adapt and fight for my life. I became known as the Pandora warrior in the arena, my reputation growing with each victory. But deep down, I hated every moment of it. I was forced to kill for the entertainment of others, my every move watched by a cheering crowd. I was just a pawn in someone else's sick game. But then, something unexpected happened. A group of rebels managed to infiltrate the arena and offered me a chance to escape. They told me they were fighting against the corrupt ruler of Pandora, who ran the arena, and forced people like me to fight for his own amusement. I didn't hesitate to join them. I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. We planned our escape carefully, using the chaos of a particularly bloody fight to slip away unnoticed. We fought our way through guards and made it to the main gates of the arena. But just as we were about to reach freedom, we were ambushed by the ruler's personal army. In the midst of the chaos, I saw my chance to finally put an end to this madness. I grabbed a nearby weapon and fought with all my strength, taking down anyone who stood in my way. The rebels and I managed to overpower the guards and make a run for it, leaving a trail of destruction in our wake. As we finally made it out of the arena and into the streets of Pandora City, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. But I also knew that this was just the beginning of our fight against the corrupt ruler. I had to do something to stop him from continuing to control and exploit innocent people. With the help of the rebels, we launched a full-scale attack on the ruler's stronghold. It was a long and bloody battle, but in the end, we emerged victorious. The ruler was defeated and the people of Pandora were finally free from his reign of terror. As I stood in the rubble of the stronghold, I couldn't believe that I had played a part in bringing down such a powerful and ruthless leader. But more importantly, I was grateful to have found a new family in the rebels who had given me a chance to fight for something bigger than myself. Life on Pandora may still be tough, but now I have a purpose and a sense of belonging. I will never forget my time in the arena and the horrors I had to endure, but it has made me stronger and more determined to fight for justice and freedom for all. I am no longer just the Pandora warrior, I am Kale, a warrior for the people. The group of survivors, consisting of 5 members, were in a constant state of alertness as they traveled through time to different eras that were all experiencing a zombie apocalypse. Their leader, a tall and muscular man named Jack, was skilled in hand-to-hand combat and was always the first to charge into battle. His second in command, a young woman named Lily, was the group's strategist and was always one step ahead when it came to planning their next move. Their first stop was the medieval era, a time of knights and castles. As they stepped out of their time machine, they were greeted by the stench of decaying flesh and the sound of moaning zombies. The group quickly took shelter in a nearby castle, using their modern weapons to fend off the zombies. They were joined by a group of knights and together they fought off the undead horde. However, their victory was short-lived as they soon realized that the castle was surrounded by zombies. With no other option, they made a daring escape on horseback, narrowly avoiding being bitten by the undead. Their next destination was the Wild West, a time of cowboys and outlaws. As they arrived, they were immediately met with the sight of a group of cowboys fighting off a group of zombies with their guns and lassos. The group joined the cowboys in their fight, and together they were able to clear out the town. However, the group soon discovered that the zombies were attracted to loud noises, making it difficult to use their guns without drawing more undead. They had to rely on their skills with a lasso and their quick reflexes to take down the zombies without making a sound. Their journey then took them to the Civil War era, a time of muskets and bayonets. The group found themselves in the midst of a bloody battle between the Union and Confederate armies. However, the living soldiers were vastly outnumbered by the undead soldiers who had risen from the battlefield. The group quickly realized that they needed to help the living soldiers if they were going to survive. They used their modern weapons and knowledge of the zombies' weaknesses to turn the tide of the battle and emerged victorious. The grateful soldiers welcomed the group into their camp, and they were able to rest and resupply before moving on to their next destination. The Industrial Revolution era was their next stop, a time of factories and machines. As they arrived, they found that the factories were overrun with zombies, making it difficult to scavenge for supplies. The group had to use their agility and speed to navigate through the maze of machinery and avoid the grasping hands of the undead. They were able to find some useful tools and weapons, but they knew they couldn't stay for long as the zombies were drawn to the noise of the machines. With their bags full, they made a hasty retreat, narrowly avoiding being trapped in the factory. Their final destination was the American Revolution, a time of muskets and cannons. The group found themselves in the middle of a crucial battle between the colonists and the British. However, the battle was interrupted by the arrival of a horde of zombies. The group quickly joined forces with the colonists and used their modern weapons to take down the undead. The colonists were amazed by the group's advanced technology and were willing to listen to their warnings about the zombies. Together, they were able to come up with a plan to defend against the undead and continue their fight for independence. As the group prepared to leave the American Revolution, they knew that their journey was far from over. They had faced many challenges and dangers, but they also found allies in unexpected places. With their time machine, they would continue to travel through different eras, fighting against the zombie apocalypse and hoping to find a way to save humanity. The group of survivors huddled together in an abandoned warehouse, their faces weary and their hearts heavy with grief. It had been 6 months since the zombie apocalypse began, and they had lost so much. Friends, family, and loved ones had all been taken by the virus that had spread like wildfire. Among the survivors was a young man named Jack, who had been a part of the failed spaceship test that had started it all. He had been the pilot of the ship, and the guilt weighed heavily on his shoulders. He had never imagined that a small meteorite orbiting the planet could cause such devastation. Next to Jack was a woman named Lily who had been a scientist on the spaceship. She had been studying the meteorite and had discovered a small parasite clinging onto its surface. It was this parasite that had caused the virus that turned people into zombies. Lily had tried to warn the others, but it was too late. The meteorite had already collided with the spaceship, causing it to crash back onto Earth. The impact had released the parasite into the atmosphere, infecting everyone it came into contact with. The survivors also included a couple, Tom and Sarah, who had been on their honeymoon when the apocalypse began. They had lost their families and their home, but they had found comfort in each other's company. Rounding out the group was an older man named George, who had been a survivalist before the outbreak. He had been prepared for any disaster, but nothing could have prepared him for this. As they sat in the warehouse, surrounded by supplies they had scavenged from abandoned stores and homes, they discussed their next move. They had been on the move for months, never staying in one place for too long. But now they were running low on food and resources. We need to find a safe place to settle down, Jack said, breaking the silence. Somewhere we can grow our own food and fortify against the zombies. Lily nodded in agreement. I've been studying maps and I think I found a potential location. It's an old military base not too far from here. Tom and Sarah exchanged glances before Tom spoke up. We'll go with you to check it out. We need to start thinking about the future. George grunted in approval. It's about time we stop running and start fighting back. The group packed their bags and set out towards the military base. Along the way, they encountered hordes of zombies, but they had become experts at taking them down. They had learned to work together and use their surroundings to their advantage. As they approached the base, they saw that it was heavily guarded by tall fences and armed soldiers. Jack and Lily approached the gates cautiously, explaining their situation to the soldiers. After a tense conversation, the group was allowed inside. The base had been abandoned, but it was still intact. The group quickly got to work, fortifying the fences and setting up a perimeter. They also found a small garden and began planting crops, hoping to become self-sufficient. As they settled into their new home, they encountered other survivors who had also found their way to the base. Together, they formed a community and worked towards rebuilding their lives. Despite the safety of the base, the survivors never forgot the dangers of the outside world. They continued to go on supply runs and defend their home from zombies. One day, while on a supply run, Jack and Lily stumbled upon a research facility. Inside, they found a cure for the zombie virus. With the help of the other survivors, they were able to mass-produce the cure and distribute it to those who needed it. The world slowly began to return to normal, and the survivors were hailed as heroes for their bravery and perseverance. Jack and Lily, who had once been filled with guilt, now felt a sense of redemption. As they looked out at their new community, Jack turned to Lily and said, "We may have started this apocalypse, but we also ended it." Lily smiled and replied, "And we did it together." The survivors had not only survived, but they had also found a new family in each other. And as they looked towards the future, they knew that they could overcome any obstacle as long as they were together. China. The once bustling streets of Beijing were now empty and desolate. The sky was a sickly shade of grey, a constant reminder of the nuclear apocalypse that had ravaged the world. The buildings that once stood tall and proud were now reduced to rubble. The Chinese government had long since collapsed, leaving the citizens to fend for themselves. Many had resorted to living in the underground tunnels and bunkers that had been built during the Cold War. Those who were lucky enough to find shelter in these places huddled together, trying to survive the harsh conditions. Food was scarce and clean water was almost non-existent. The air was thick with radiation, causing many to suffer from illnesses and mutations. The Chinese people were resilient, however, and they refused to give up. They scavenged what they could from the ruins of their cities and formed small communities, banding together to protect each other. Some even attempted to grow crops in the contaminated soil, hoping that it would provide sustenance. But it was a dangerous and uncertain life, and many did not survive. United Kingdom. London, the once bustling capital of the United Kingdom, was now a ghost town. The streets were littered with debris, and the once iconic landmarks were now nothing but ruins. The Queen and the royal family had long since evacuated to a secret bunker, leaving the citizens to face the aftermath of the nuclear apocalypse. The British government had collapsed, and chaos had ensued. Riots and looting were rampant as people fought for whatever resources they could find. The few who were lucky enough to have access to clean water and food hoarded it, becoming the rulers of the new world. But amidst the chaos, there were also acts of kindness and bravery. Many citizens banded together to form communities and help each other survive. The British spirit of resilience and determination shone through, even in the darkest of times. And while the United Kingdom may have fallen, its people refused to be defeated. Russia. The once mighty and powerful nation of Russia was now a shadow of its former self. The once majestic cities of Moscow and St. Petersburg were now reduced to rubble and ash. The Kremlin, once the seat of power, was now a mere memory. The Russian government had collapsed, leaving the citizens to fend for themselves. The harsh, frozen landscape of Russia had become even more unforgiving after the nuclear apocalypse. The harsh winters were now even colder, and the limited resources were quickly running out. Many turned to violence and crime to survive, while others retreated to the underground bunkers that had been built during the Cold War. But despite the bleakness of their situation, the Russian people refused to give up. They were a resilient and proud people, and they fought tooth and nail to survive. Some even ventured out into the wasteland, scavenging for resources and trying to rebuild their once great nation. USA. The United States, once a superpower, was now a shattered and broken country. The once bustling cities of New York and Los Angeles were now nothing but ruins. The White House, the symbol of American democracy, had been reduced to rubble. The government had collapsed, leaving the citizens to fend for themselves. The people of the United States were facing a new reality, one where survival was the only thing that mattered. Gangs and factions had formed, each vying for control and power. The streets were dangerous, and the constant threat of violence loomed over the survivors. But amidst the chaos, there were also glimmers of hope. The American people were resourceful and resilient, and they refused to let their country fall. They banded together, forming communities and working together to rebuild what they had lost. And while the road ahead was long and difficult, the American spirit of perseverance and determination burned bright. John, Melinda, Sarah, Martin and Dr. Will Wright were a group of survivors in a world infected with a deadly zombie virus. They had been traveling together for months, constantly on the move in search for a safe haven. John was the leader of the group, a strong and capable protector, but he had a soft spot when it came to killing zombies. He couldn't bring himself to take a life, even if it was one of the undead. Melinda was a skilled traveler, having grown up in the southern states. She knew how to navigate through different terrains and was an expert at repairing vehicles. She was always there to assist the group in their travels and to make sure their vehicles were in top shape. Sarah was a young medic, only a student when the outbreak started. She had quickly adapted to the new reality and used her medical knowledge to help the group. She was compassionate and caring, always tending to the injured and sick. She had become an invaluable member of the group. Martin was the engineer of the group, using his skills to create defenses against the zombies. He was always coming up with new and innovative ways to keep them safe. He had a knack for building and was always eager to share his ideas with the group. Finally, there was Dr. Will Wright. He was a scientist who had been working on a cure for the virus before it spread. He had joined the group in hopes of finding a secure place to continue his research. He was determined to find a cure and save humanity from this nightmare. The group had been on the move for weeks, constantly scavenging for supplies and looking for a safe place to settle. They had traveled through cities, forests, and even mountains. But the zombies were everywhere, making it difficult to find a suitable place to call home. As they traveled, they talked about their hopes and dreams for the future. They shared stories of their past lives and the loved ones they had lost. They laughed and joked, trying to keep their spirits up in a world that seemed to have no hope left. Dr. Will Wright was always busy, studying samples of the virus and trying to come up with a cure. He would often get lost in his work, forgetting about the dangers that lurked outside. But the group understood his dedication and supported him in any way they could. One day, as they were passing through a small town, they stumbled upon an old laboratory. It was abandoned and run down, but it had everything Dr. Will Wright needed to continue his research. The group decided to stay and make it their new home. They spent weeks cleaning and fortifying the laboratory, turning it into a secure base. John, Melinda, Sarah, and Martin worked together to build defenses and create a safe living space. Dr. Will Wright was grateful for their help and was able to focus on his work. As the days passed, Dr. Will Wright made significant progress in finding a cure. He had successfully created a vaccine that could potentially save humanity. The group was overjoyed, knowing that there was finally hope for a cure. But their joy was short-lived as a group of zombies attacked the laboratory. It was the biggest horde they had ever encountered and the defenses they had built were not enough to hold them off. John and Martin fought bravely, trying to protect the others while Sarah tended to the injured. Melinda, on the other hand, had an idea. She remembered a nearby dam that could potentially flood the town and wipe out the zombies. She quickly gathered the group and they made their way to the dam. It was a dangerous mission, but they were determined to save themselves and the world. Melinda used her knowledge of mechanics to operate the controls and release the water from the dam. The zombies were washed away, and the group was able to make it back to their laboratory safely. Dr. Will Wright wasted no time in using the vaccine on the infected members of the group. It was a success, and they were all cured. They couldn't believe it, they had finally found a way to end the nightmare. The group decided to stay at the laboratory and continue their work on finding a cure for the rest of the world. They had become a family, bonded by their experiences and their determination to survive. They had proven that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. And with their combined skills and strengths, they were able to overcome any obstacle that came their way.